What's up, people? We're back with another video, and the YouTube channel this is called South African Late News, and then the handle for the channel it is at KZN_ZA. Yeah, the Senzomira case is still under search, but we can still talk about the nonsensical docket 626. Yeah, the five accused before court are all innocent, and we can see that now because the evidence that is before court is very dodgy and it is incomplete. And then people that believe in Guinea have poor memory. Remember that the state has in the past arrested a wrong person for this case. So it is therefore possible for the state to make the same mistake again because we know that our police are very incompetent. So it is highly possible. In South Africa, we forget too quickly that mistake happened and we don't learn from the past. Remember that years ago, Senzomera case, there was a guy by the name of Zama Ushambat who was wrongfully arrested based on a terrible, visible police sketch or identity kit. The identity kit was made based on the information that was provided by Longotwala and Zandi Kumalo. So we know by now that Zandi Kumalo and Longotwala, they are all suspect on docket 275. So for me, when they made that sketch, I think they were trying to mislead the police so that they can go after a wrong person and not focus on the people that were in the house. So that's the first thing. Zamosan Mbata has since sued the state for over 17 million rand and he's suing them for wrongful arrest, malicious prosecution, and defamation of character. And all thanks to the useless Twitter police that gave the state wrong information. So the same thing is happening to the likes of Ntanzi and the four other accused. They have been all wrongfully arrested. That is clear. The problem is that the state realized that case against the five accused is weak. But now they're scared to drop the case because they're going to be embarrassed. For years, the state has told us that they arrested the right people, but the evidence is showing otherwise. So now the state is forced to continue with this case because they don't want to be embarrassed. The first clue that the state had about the weak case, the DNA expert told them that the five accused are excluded from the DNA sample that was taken from the house. If you are excluded from the DNA sample, it means that you are not in the house. That is simple and straightforward. Kininda then realized that the case against the five accused is weak because of the DNA. He knows that the DNA cannot be cooked. It's a fact. DNA, unlike the cell phone records, cannot be cooked because it is science. It is conducted by doctors, and we know that doctors are not like police. They are not corrupt. They've got good morals and good ethics. So when Kininda realized that the DNA is not on his side, he then relied on the evidence by Zungu. Zungu said he was at the hostel when Senzo was killed. However, the state has failed to present Zungu's Section 205 and his tracker. Remember that on the day Senzo was killed, Zungu was driving a police car. So the state has the tracker information which shows the movement of the car on that day. The state also has Section 205, which contains his cell phone records for that day. So I suspect that the state did not produce that information because it contradicts their version. It shows that Zungu was not at the hospital on the night Senzo was killed. So the state has hidden that information. It's simple and straightforward because it's very easy to get a tracker information. They've got the AVL for the likes of Mohane and others. So they should have got the same information for Zungu because Zungu is also a policeman. So clearly they are hiding something. Unlike the DNA evidence, Zungu's statement is not backed up by science. He's just telling us a fairy tale. Inganekwane kuphela la ikhulumayo. Zungu was likely not at the hostel when Sento was killed, and he did not witness the five accused exchanging guns. My suspicion is that Zungu was likely a corrupt policeman that was in trouble, and the police knew that they could use Zungu, so they blackmailed him. They said, "Okay, Zungu, you're gonna have to testify against these five accused, or else we're gonna charge you with something." And then Zungu was forced to accept the offer because he's a corrupt cop. So Zungu agreed, and then Zungu, the first issue about Zungu for me, Zungu has already admitted that he hung around Inkabis. He was a friend with Inkabis. So that tells you about his character and his morals. What type of a policeman hangs around with Inkabis? Clearly, only a corrupt policeman do that. That is just my theory. Then Zungu made it worse when he told the court that he got some information from his father. So it means Zungu told the court hearsay evidence that is not admissible in court. So Zungu's story is a bit dodgy from start to finish because it got so many holes in it. Remember that when he was testifying, he was asked if he made notes somewhere or anywhere. He said yes, but those notes are back at home. He said if he's given a chance to go and check them over the weekend, he will bring them. But came Monday morning, he said he went home, he couldn't find those notes. Clearly, he was lying because he made no such notes. There are no notes. Zungu is telling us Inganekwane kuphela. Then the second issue for me, it's the issue about Gadla being the shooter. We were told that Gadla is the one that shot Senzo. But Gadla's phone pinged at Johannesburg CBD at about 8:30, around there. And we know for the fact that Senzo was killed at about the same time. It means Zungu was in Johannesburg CBD, not in Vosloorus. Because if his cell phone pings in Johannesburg CBD, he's there. So Ncube cannot be in two different places at once because he's not Holy Spirit. So if Gadla was in Joburg CBD at age of us age, clearly he's not the shooter of Senzo. That's a fact. The state then realized that the Gadla's phone records are going to be a problem, and then so they decided to come up with the fake confession story because they know this story about Gadla's phone is a problem for the state. So Ntanzi and Muzibia had to be tortured so that they can confess and then implicate the three other guys. My question is, why did Ntanzi have to make a second confession? Clearly, the state had forgotten to include certain things on the first confession. So they needed to cook a better confession for the court in front of a magistrate. Straightforward. Ntanzi should have only made one confession. That's it. But the state realized that no, we forgot to include this and that. So let us ask Ntanzi to come and make the second confession. And Ntanzi told the court that Gininda offered him to he offered to pay his family around 3 million rand if he confesses and then implicate the others. Surprisingly enough, this is not the first case where Gininda has been accused of offering the same amount, 3 million rand. In the case between Rodovan Krejcir and the state, there was a witness who made the same allegation that Gininda offered him 3 million rand to confess and then implicate Rodovan Krejcir. So Gininda is mentioned in two cases where he was a lead investigator, and then in both cases he's accused of offering 3 million rand for a confession. So there's a pattern of offering money, there's a pattern of torturing witnesses whenever Gininda is involved. So this should say a lot because it can't just happen by any chance. So the likes of Ntanzi and Sibia were then forced to confess because they were tortured. They had to save their lives. It's simple as that. Then the worst thing about Docket 636 is that people that in the house say that Senzo was killed by a gun with a wheel, which means it was a 38 special. But then the state expert, Mr. Mangana, he came to court and said, no, Senzo Mio was killed by 9 millimeter. So we have big contradiction because the state has got to have a correct murder weapon. But as we speak, the state is saying it's a 9 millimeter, but the eyewitnesses that were in the house are saying the gun had a wheel. So that Rata cannot convict these guys because a gun contradiction is just too much. It's too much. So the story about the 9 millimeter, I believe that the state used the wrong gun so that they can link it to gun. They knew that Ngube had a 9 millimeter, but the witnesses in the house say they saw a revolver. And remember that Mangena said when he went to collect the gun for examination, he said he found the bag on an open bag, which means it was not sealed. So it means that the chain of evidence was not properly done. If the gun was on an open bag, it means it could have been changed. Maybe the barrel of a gun could have been removed or changed. So we cannot rely on that gun evidence because it was on an open bag. That is not how you keep evidence that is going to be used in court. So all in all, state case is fucked up, as Advocate Defo said it. Remember in court. So if Rata was fair, he cannot convict these accused because there are so many contradictions in this case. And then, in other news, Advocate Defo has laid a complaint against Judge Rata in the JSE. The complaint is about Judge's unfair treatment towards the defense lawyers. I'm interested to see what will happen if they're gonna bring Rata to the JSE like Judge Benenge. Who knows? So there are some interesting times ahead, and it's only going to resume in April. But it is also interesting if Judge Rata has changed his ways in April when the case resumed, especially after the backlash he received on his treatment of the late Advocate Ngome Zulu. Remember that Judge Rata made utterances, I think it was a day or 2 days before Ngome Zulu's death. He said he saw Ngome Zulu in court, whereas Ngome Zulu was in court. So that is also included on Advocate Stefo's complaint against Judge Rata. He's saying this judge was making assumptions that had no basis in the first place. So we're gonna see what happened. But I'm just hoping that Rata is gonna change his attitude because he's not conducting this trial in a fair manner. Thank you for watching.